I'm Mai Rodriguez. Today on Newsfeed at noon. President Bongbong Marcos is optimistic of maintaining strong ties with the U.S. under a new Trump administration. The Commission on Elections suspends its ballot printing. The Bureau of Internal Revenue exceeds its 2024 collection target of 2.8 trillion pesos. And U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith reports President-elect Donald Trump made an unprecedented criminal bid to hold on to power after losing the 2020 election. Thanks for joining us. President Bongbong Marcos is optimistic the Philippines will be able to sustain its strong economic, diplomatic, and defense relations with the U.S. under President-elect Donald Trump's leadership. Marcos had a phone conversation with outgoing U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris on Tuesday. In a statement, Harris said there is bipartisan support within the U.S. Congress and Washington for the strengthening of ties with the Philippines, especially in terms of security, economic prosperity, and people-to-people connections. She also stressed the need to maintain Washington's steadfast support for Manila amid China's continued aggression in the West Philippine Sea. Marcos and Harris met a couple of times in the past. The first was during the Vice President's Manila visit in November 2022. Vice President Sara Duterte's trust rating dipped in the fourth quarter survey of the OCTA research group. It went down to 49% from 59% in the third quarter. The Vice President's performance rating also decreased to 48% from 52%. According to OCTA, this is the first time VP Sara's numbers fell below what it calls the majority threshold. The research group adds this is the Vice President's lowest rating since December 2023. As for President Marcos, a slight dip in the Chief Executive's trust rating to 65% from 69% in the third quarter. Mr. Marcos's performance rating also went down to 64% from 66%. Marikina Representative Stella Quimbo is named acting chair of the House Appropriations Committee. This follows the resignation of Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldi Co, who stepped down due to what he says are pressing health concerns. Quimbo, who served as the senior vice chairperson of the Appropriations Committee, assumed the role under House rules, which allow the next in line to take over once a post is vacated. She will serve in an acting capacity until a new chairperson is formally appointed. This transition ensures continuity in handling the national budget at a time when the country is managing crucial fiscal challenges. In an interview with the Bilyonaryo news channels at the forefront, Quimbo says that she will be overseeing the implementation of controversial ACAP funds.
Most importantly, we still have oversight on the budget. So we need to make sure that although the budget has been approved, we need to make sure that the executive executes the budget well, so that the funds are utilized in a timely manner.
The Commission on Elections is immediately stopping the printing of 73 million official ballots for the May elections. This after the Supreme Court issued a temporary restraining order preventing the poll body from disqualifying 5 candidates. Let's get more details on this from Hannah T. She joins us now on the phone. Hannah, go ahead. Hannah? Okay, let's try Hannah T again. Hannah, are you on the line?
Mai. Hi, Mai.
Yes, go ahead.
Mai, the COMELEC is now dealing with a nearly 2-week delay after the Supreme Court issued a temporary restraining order forcing them to stop ballot printing. This is actually the first time this happened in the history of the Commission, and over 6 million ballots have been affected, including those for local absentee voting, overseas voting, and Bangsamoro parliamentary elections. The printed ballots are already worth 150 million and are currently under inventory at the National Printing Office. These will be destroyed or shredded upon approval by the Commission on Audit to prevent any risk of misuse. The TRO stems from 5 nuisance and disqualification cases of aspirants, including one filed by former Congressman Edgar Erice, and has led to updates in the candidate list. An aspirant named Subair Mustafa is now included in the senatorial lineup, bringing the total from 66 to 67. But if former Governor Chavit Singson formally withdraws his senatorial candidacy, his name will also be removed and will bring back the total number of senatorial candidates to 66. Many COMELEC events were moved due to this delay. The trusted build of the election management system has been moved to January 15, while mock elections are now scheduled for January 25. Final testing and sealing of vote counting machines will also be adjusted. But despite these challenges, the COMELEC assures the public that the May 2025 midterm elections will proceed as scheduled. But they hope that this is the first and last time this will happen so that the COMELEC can proceed with their timeline. Mai?
Hannah, you mentioned that Mustafa is now included in the senatorial list and that Singson may withdraw. So how will this affect the ballots? Can you walk us through this?
Yes, currently the senatorial list on the 6 million ballots already printed shows 66 candidates. But because of the Supreme Court TRO, Mustafa, who is a candidate who was initially excluded, will now be added, making it 67. But if Chavit Singson formally withdraws, his name will also be removed. But the COMELEC says they need his formal certification first. That means the final list could go back to 66, but it depends on when his withdrawal is processed. What's tricky now, Mai, is that the candidates after Mustafa may be affected. Their ballot numbers could also change. That's more than 10 candidates, and some have already printed campaign materials with their original ballot numbers. So they might have to spend again for new materials. Mai?
I see. And now that printing is temporarily halted, who will shoulder the expenses for the next round?
Mai, the COMELEC will cover the cost of the new printing, and they've clarified that the expenses actually fall under their agreement with Miro Systems, who is their automated elections partner, but the COMELEC says this is not Miro's fault, and COMELEC assured that the funds are ready to keep things moving. Back to you, Mai.
Thanks for that report, Hannah T. President Bongbong Marcos and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos hosted several senators and their spouses for dinner Monday at the Bahay Pangulo in Malacanang. The First Lady shared photos on Instagram saying they had a lovely time catching up. Notably absent, though, were known Duterte allies, Senators Bongo and Bato de la Rosa, and the President's sister, Amy Marcos. Senator Grace Poe was also absent. The dinner was held on the same day as the Iglesia ni Cristo's National Rally for Peace last January 13. The Philippines fires back at China after Beijing calls the Philippines-Japan Reciprocal Access Agreement provocative. Manila insists that the agreement is a direct response to China's continued harassment in the West Philippine Sea. Francis Falve has the details.
Chinese Coast Guard vessel 5901, also known as the Monster Ship, has returned to our exclusive economic zone. According to PCG spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela, the ship was last spotted 77 nautical miles off Capones Island in Zambales on Tuesday.
You do not possess any legal authority to patrol within the Philippines exclusive economic zone. You are directed to depart immediately and notify us of your intentions. Over.
The PCG continues to send radio challenges to the Chinese vessel. Currently, the largest vessel of the PCG, the BRP Teresa Magbanwa and the BRP Gabriela Silang, are tailing the Monster Ship. Aside from this vessel, 2 other Chinese Coast Guard vessels are being monitored within the EEZ.
Our main role right now is to make sure that the China Coast Guard vessel don't come close off the coast of Zambales. So that is the mission objective of 9701 and 8301 to move further away the 5901.
NSC Director General Jonathan Malaya expressed alarm over the presence of the monster ship, stating that it aims to intimidate Filipino fishermen. Malaya emphasized that China's aggressive actions have led the Philippines to bolster its alliances with other nations. On China's claims that the Philippines-Japan Reciprocal Access Agreement is provocative, Malaya reiterated that this is the country's response to harassment in the West Philippine Sea.
First and foremost, we've already made that call for the PRC to withdraw the monster ship for reasons that, number one, as mentioned by Commodore J. Tariela, we do not want to normalize this kind of behavior. It is an escalation and provocative, and the presence of the monster ship 77 nautical miles off Capones Island in Zambales is clearly not acceptable.
The Department of Foreign Affairs has filed another diplomatic protest against China. Authorities also provided an update on the submersible drones recovered in Philippine waters. According to the Philippine Navy, 5 underwater drones have been recovered from various parts of the West Philippine Sea. 1 has undergone analysis, while the other 4 are still undergoing forensic examination by the AFP. The drones were retrieved from Kalayaan Island, Pasukin, Masbate, and Misamis. However, the Navy cannot release details from the forensic investigation until all drones have been analyzed. What is clear is that these drones were used for data gathering.
This information will have commercial value, it will have academic value, it could also have, with the crisscrossing of information right now, it could also have military purposes or applications.
The AFP assured the public that they have contingency measures to counter possible reclamation by China in Bajo de Masinloc, a red line for the Philippines. These measures include maintaining BRP Sierra Madre in the position, ensuring no unilateral destruction of natural resources within the EEZ, and guaranteeing uninterrupted rotation and resupply missions. Francis Polbe, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
President Marcos orders Health Secretary Ted Herbosa to monitor PhilHealth services. That's amid the zero subsidy of the agency under the 2025 national budget. The Department of Health had once explained PhilHealth will not run out of funds, even if cases of serious illnesses like heart disease and diabetes are on the rise.
Yung dating binibigay na subsidiya, hindi pa nagamit. Napunta lang sa bangko imbes na gamitin ng tao. Ang PhilHealth kasi ang tawag natin dyan isang pay-as-you-go insurance system. Paluwagan ba na sa isang taon, hindi lahat ng Pilipino magkakasakit, pero yung mga magkakasakit, merong nagbayad para sa kanila. So, sabi ng gobyerno, yung nakatago dyan sa loob ng bangko na sobra-sobra, yan muna yung gamitin. Nag-approve ang PhilHealth Board of Directors ng 284 billion corporate operating budget para sa 2025 na may kalakip dun sa loob ng 284, 271 billion yung budget para sa benefits. So meron pong budget. Walang subsidy, yes, pero merong budget. Meron pa kaming isang in-approve yung Board of Directors yung para sa emergency benefits. Dati-rati kasi kapag na-emergency ka, hindi ka naman na-admit, hindi ka napasok sa loob ng ward, walang PhilHealth coverage, magbabayad yung pasyente or yung DOH. Aba ngayon, sabi ng PhilHealth Board, hindi, dapat yung binabayaran din natin.
Transport regulators warn thousands of riders could lose their jobs if the motorcycle for hire bill fails to pass in Congress. The bill is critical for legitimizing and regulating motorcycle for hire services, affecting not just the livelihood of the riders, but also commuters who depend on them daily. Agatha Gregorio reports.
The Motorcycles for Hire Act, or the Law on Motorcycle Taxis, needs to be passed in the 19th Congress, or else 60,000 riders may lose their livelihood or end up operating illegally as habal-habal. That's according to the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board after a hearing at the Senate.
Dahil pilot study to, they derive their existence, itong mga riders, from the pilot study of the 19th Congress. Pag nag-bow out si 19th Congress, mawawalang MC taxi, mawawalan ng hanabuhay ang ating mga riders.
The LTFRB wants motorcycle taxis on the road because they can help commuters when there's a shortage of jeepneys or buses. Riders stand with land transport regulators in support of the Motorcycles for Hire Act. Riders held a motorcade outside the Senate saying there is a need for clear regulations to lessen the habal-habal.
We need to legalize to reflect the reality on the ground. Alam mo, maraming mga drivers ng sasakyan, sinasabi, ang gulo-gulo ng mga motorsiklo. Diba? Hala-hala sa karsada, magkakat, ganito, ganyan. Pero kung may disiplina naman, pwede naman tayo maging harmonious sa karsada.
Lawmakers also tackled complaints from some Grab drivers that they shoulder the full 20% discount for students and senior citizens instead of the transportation network company. As for motorcycle taxis, LTFRB says that Angkas and Joyride only pay 20% of the discount, while the 80% is paid by the operator.
We're now drafting a memorandum circular which will be implemented this February, wherein all of the discounts will now be shouldered by the operator and by the owner of the app. Definitely, the driver should not be included in the equation, sir. Dapat walang sino-shoulder yung driver, sir.
According to the LTFRB, Grab used to pay 40% of the discount, while 60% would be from the operator. But the National Public Transport Coalition says Grab drivers have been shouldering 100% since March last year.
Since hindi sumunod itong Grab, halimbawa, at yung iba pang TNCO owners, na charge pala 100%, halimbawa sa Grab, yung discount sa kanilang mga rider, at yung iba, may sharing nga pero hindi naman talaga nasusunod kung ano nakalagay sa LTFRB, memorandum circular, don't they deserve refund? Especially itong mga taga-Grab na mga drivers?
That is exactly the subject of the hearing last January 8, and we are inclined to follow your recommendation that there should be a refund by your line of thinking, and we will have the decision by the end of the month.
The LTFRB adds they are looking at splitting it by 80% for the TNC and 20% for the operator. But if this happens, drivers may still end up paying a portion of the discount, as many are both drivers and operators for Grab. Agatha Gregorio, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Firefighters continue to struggle against raging wildfires in Southern California. Powerful winds expected in the next 24 hours could make the situation worse, fueling extreme fire behavior or turning new sparks into full-blown infernos. The Eaton and Palisades fires are now the second and fourth most destructive wildfires in California's history. That's according to the State Departments of Forestry and Fire Protection. Together with the Hearst fire, these blazes have scorched about 60 square miles, an area larger than the city of Paris. Meanwhile, a new blaze, the Auto Fire, erupted Monday in Ventura County and is 25% contained. U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith says Donald Trump tried to hold on to power after losing the 2020 election in an unprecedented criminal effort, but the case against him was halted by his November election victory. Smith's report details a 4-count indictment accusing Trump of obstructing vote certification, defrauding the U.S. of fair election rules or results, and depriving voters of their rights. It says there was enough evidence to convict him, but his upcoming return to the presidency made a trial impossible. Trump has pleaded not guilty to all charges. This case shows the complexity of pursuing legal action against a political leader, raising questions about justice and accountability in a deeply divided nation. We're taking a quick break. Up ahead, The country's tax bureau beats its collection target for 2024. That and more when Newsfeed at noon returns. Stay with us. You're back on Newsfeed at noon. The Bureau of Internal Revenue achieves a milestone as it exceeds its 2024 collection target of 2.8 trillion pesos. Preliminary figures show this is the first time in 2 decades that the Philippine Tax Agency has hit its collection goal. This comes despite slower economic growth of 5.2% in the third quarter, down from 6.4% in the second quarter of 2024. The milestone is credited to the reforms initiated by Commissioner Romeo Lumagi, including a nationwide ISO certification for crucial processes to tackle tax evasion. This shows the Philippine government's efforts to modernize tax collection are paying off, providing much-needed funds for infrastructure, healthcare, and other public services. The country's debt continues to rise in November, exacerbated by a weak peso and high borrowing costs. Sujin Kim has the details.
The Philippines' national debt hit a record high of 16.09 trillion pesos as of November 2024. According to the Bureau of Treasury, this marks a 70.7 billion peso or 0.4% increase from October, driven by new borrowings and the peso's depreciation against the dollar. Currently, nearly 70% of government debt is domestic, while over 30% is foreign obligations. Domestic debt rose by 31.82 billion pesos due to additional securities, while foreign debt grew by 38.88 billion pesos, largely due to the peso's weakening. The Bureau of Treasury is working to shift the funding mix to 80% domestic and 20% foreign to reduce exposure to foreign exchange fluctuations and global uncertainties. National Treasurer Sharon Almanza clarified that the Philippines remains far from breaching the 70% debt sustainability threshold, currently at less than half that figure. Economists also note that the rise in outstanding debt aligns with fiscal targets.
Hindi siya cause of concern kasi may plano or planado or may programa ang ating deficit and debt figures. So alam natin over the medium term magkano yung kailangan nating gastusin para sa ekonomiya at ilang porsyento nung gagastusin natin yung uutangin, ilang porsyento yung manggagaling sa taxes, etc. So it's not a cause of concern in a negative way. We are always concerned about the figures, but ang maganda dito, better than expected yung figures. If you will look at the DTR press release, sinasabi nila na yung debt na figures lower than the program. So in the end, kung ano yung pinlano natin na priorities na gastusin, na amount na dapat gastusin at yung uutangin ay on track tayo.
The government aims to achieve a 60.6% debt to GDP ratio by 2028. While pre-pandemic levels were below 40%, the Philippines had to borrow heavily to fund essential services like vaccines.
Ang debt figures natin ay tinatawag na stock of debt, meaning nag-accumulate yan over time. Tapos, pagka hindi mo babawasan yung principal, interest lang ang babayaran mo, talagang lalaki at lalaki. Pero ang maganda dito is, pati principal, tinatry nating bawasan over time para talagang over time yung debt over GDP ay magpipik sometime in the next few years, tapos bababa na siya.
However, think tank Ibon Foundation warns that the rising debt could become a heavy burden on future generations.
That debacle in December was quite clear about government's priorities. They are willing to automatically pay all debt without any consideration at all of how their contribution or not. But unfortunately, they're also quite willing to cut spending on education, on health, even on housing actually, and agriculture because they are keeping debt service sacrosanct. And I think that is a huge burden on Filipinos of this generation, but especially when talking about education and health on future generations of Filipinos.
Africa also called for debt relief from creditors.
There's so much to fix on the revenue side to reduce our reliance on debt, but there's actually also so much to fix on our debt service side. I don't think there's any shame in asking for debt relief. We should go to our creditors, especially the multilateral development lenders, but even friendly bilateral donors, bilateral lenders. Would you say Philippine poverty and hunger are getting worse? Agriculture and domestic manufacturing are failing. They're decades lows. These, I think, are good cases for asking for lighter terms for creditors to ensure repayment and that sustainability that is not at the expense of social services and people's immediate needs right now.
Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Good news for future scientists and mathematicians. The Gokongwei family, known for building one of the country's most diversified business empires, is investing in education through scholarships. The Gokongwei Brothers Foundation, or GBF, has renewed its partnership with the Department of Education, aiming to strengthen science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM, education in the Philippines. Education Secretary Sani Angara led the signing of the Memorandum of Agreement together with Gokongwei's siblings Lance, Lisa, and Rubina. This initiative is a reflection of the Gokongwei family's deep commitment to nation building, rooted in their belief that education is key to the country's progress. These efforts to enhance STEM education will help equip the next generation with crucial skills for a rapidly changing world while contributing to sustainable economic growth in the Philippines. The Philippine car industry wrapped up 2024 on a high note, posting strong sales despite missing its year-end target. This reflects a recovery in consumer spending despite high interest rates and supply chain issues. Automakers remain optimistic for 2025, adapting to market trends and introducing new models. Our mobility correspondent, G. Baroga, has the details.
While the local auto industry fell short of its goal of 500,000 units, it still ended 2024 on a strong note. The total sales reached 467,252 vehicles, marking an 8.7% jump compared to the same period last year. A joint report from the Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers of the Philippines, Inc., or CAMPI, and the Truck Manufacturers Association shows that passenger cars made up 26% of the market, with 120,770 units sold, up by 11% from 2023. Commercial vehicles dominated with a 74% market share, totaling 346,482 units, an 8% increase over last year. The Asian utility vehicle segment continues to impress, claiming 24% of the market with 81,818 units sold, 34% higher than in 2023. Light commercial vehicles, a steady performer, sold a total of 253,412 units. In December alone, 42,044 vehicles were sold, reflecting a 2.8% increase from November. CAMPI President Romel Gutierrez says this solid performance shows the resilience of the industry and assures that it remains locked in a growth path in 2025. Toyota, led by the Bilyonaryo T family, tightens its grip on the top spot with a 47% market share, selling 218,019 units. Mitsubishi holds second with 19%, moving 89,124 units, while Ford sticks to third despite a slight 11% dip in sales, totaling 27,997. Nissan and Suzuki round out the top 5, each with 6% and 4% market share respectively. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
The government can pay its growing debt. This is according to Angel Pasis, Chief Executive Officer in AIA Investment Management and Trust Corp. In an interview with the Bilyonaryo News Channel's Basis Points, Pasis explains this is due to the government's prioritization of fiscal sustainability and an improved revenue collection. The Philippines' outstanding debt went up to 16.1 trillion pesos.
Debt to GDP is actually one of the lowest for the Philippines. As you remember, we were being criticized during the pandemic because we were one of the few who didn't go all out and spend, and we actually protected our fiscal position.
Swiss bank UBS AG is not exiting the Philippines. This is the bank's clarification following reports that it ceased operations in the country. In a statement to the Bilyonaryo News Channel, UBS stressed that it remains committed to the Philippine market. UBS, one of the world's largest wealth managers, explains that its securities and investments divisions will continue to be active players in the Philippine financial landscape. The closure of its representative office in Manila, which operated under a separate license and had been dormant for nearly 2 decades, was a strategic decision. UBS country head Robbie Go emphasized that this move is purely administrative and does not impact the bank's operations or its long-term commitment to the country. Up next, a piece of good news from Britain's royal family as Kate Middleton reveals her cancer is now in remission. Newsfeed at noon. We'll be right back. You're still watching Newsfeed at noon. Again, the headlines. President Bongbong Marcos is optimistic of maintaining strong ties with the U.S. under a new Trump administration. The Commission on Elections suspends its ballot printing. The Bureau of Internal Revenue exceeds its 2024 collection target of 2.8 trillion pesos. And U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith reports President-elect Donald Trump made an unprecedented criminal bid to hold on to power after losing the 2020 election. Let's get an update on the weather. Pag-asa forecaster Dan Villamil joins us now on the line. Dan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ms. Mai, and to our viewers. So sa kasalukuyan wala pa rin tayong binabantayang low pressure area o anumang sama ng panahon na maaaring makaapekto sa ating bansa sa mga susunod na araw. At dahil sa easterlies o yung hangin na nanggagaling sa Karakatang Pasipiko, mataas sa tsansa ng pag-ulan ang posibleng maranasan sa areas ng Eastern Visayas, Caraga, Davao Region at Soc-Sargen. At dahil naman sa northeast monsoon o yung malamig na hanging amihan, makakaranas tayo ng mga kaulapan at mataas sa tsansa ng mga pag-ulan sa areas ng Cagayan Valley, Cordillera, Bicol Region at sa mga lalawigan ng Aurora, Quezon at ilang areas ng Mimaropa. For Metro Manila at sa lalabing bahagi ng ating bansa, magpapatuloy itong fair weather, maliwalas sa panahon, maliban na lamang sa mga tsansa ng light rains o pag-ambon, na dulot ng amihan sa Metro Manila and the rest of Luzon at tsansa naman ng thunderstorms sa rest of Visayas and rest of Mindanao. Sa kalagayan naman nating karagatan sa kasalukuyan, walang nakataas na gale warning sa anumang baybay na ating kapuluan, ngunit iba yung pag-iingat pa rin sa ating mga kababayan na maglalayag sa northern and eastern seaboards ng Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao dahil posible pa rin tayong makaranas ng katamtaman hanggang sa maalong karagatan. Yes po, Miss Mai.
Alright, maraming salamat, Dan Villamil, Weather Specialist ng Pag-asa. Mediators and warring sides say a ceasefire deal between Israel and Gaza was closer than ever. However, after more than 8 hours of talks, a senior Hamas official told Reuters late on Tuesday that the Palestinian group was still waiting for Israel to submit maps showing how its forces would withdraw from Gaza. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson earlier told a news conference that talks on the final details were underway. U.S. President Joe Biden, whose administration has been taking part alongside an envoy of President-elect Donald Trump, said a deal was close. Hamas said the talks had reached the final steps and that it hoped this round of negotiations would lead to a deal after mediation by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. The European Commission is reviewing its investigations into tech giants like Apple, Meta, and Google. This is according to a report by the Financial Times. The companies have asked U.S. President-elect Donald Trump to push back against the EU's strict rules. A source says Trump's presidency is influencing the review. The EU may scale back or change these investigations with all decisions and fines on hold. For global business, this highlights how politics shapes regulations on big tech, affecting how these firms operate and compete worldwide. Neither the tech companies nor the European Commission have commented on the matter. Indonesia takes a step towards safeguarding children online by planning to set a minimum age for social media users. The communications minister says this move will pave the way for a stricter law on underage social media use. However, the official did not specify what the age limit will be. This plan comes after Australia banned children under 16 from using social media. Last year, Indonesia's internet penetration reached over 79%, with a survey showing that 48% of children under 12 had internet access. This initiative shows Indonesia's commitment to protecting younger generations online and ensuring a safer digital environment for future users to learn, grow, and thrive. Catherine, Britain's Princess of Wales, announces that her cancer is in remission. On X, formerly known as Twitter, the princess says she's relieved to now be in remission as she remains focused on recovery. Catherine paid a visit to a hospital in central London Tuesday, where she underwent treatment to personally thank its medical staff. The wife of Prince William only made a handful of public appearances last year, since she disclosed her cancer diagnosis in March. Catherine's father-in-law, King Charles, also underwent treatment for cancer. A source from Buckingham Palace said the king's treatment was moving in a positive direction and would continue this year. In South Korea, protesters again crowded the entrance of impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol's residence in Seoul. This as authorities are slated to arrive to execute an arrest warrant over insurrection charges. This is in connection to his December 3 martial law declaration. There is heavy police presence in the area, triggering tensions with pro-Yoon demonstrators. Authorities failed to arrest Yoon on January 3rd after a standoff with hundreds of presidential security agents and military guards. Yoon has been holed up in his hillside villa since Parliament voted to suspend him last month. Still to come, Get to know the first Filipina who managed to travel the world using only her Philippine passport. Stay with Newsfeed at noon here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. You're back on Newsfeed at noon. Let's get the latest in sports. The Converge Fiber Xers leading Tuesday's winners in the PBA Commissioner's Cup. The Fiber Xers erased a 17-point deficit to beat the rain or shine Elasto Painters at the Ninoy Aquino Stadium 103-96. Alex Stockton led Converge with 21 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists and was named best player of the game. Sharpshooter Jordan Heading chipped in 17 markers. In the first game, the Meralco Bolts stunned the league-leading Northport Batang Pier 111-94. Import Akil Mitchell top scored for Meralco with 30 points, while Chris Banquero showcased his brilliance with 25 points. This 36-year-old Filipina had a passport and a dream to travel across the globe. In a journey that took her almost 12 years to finish, Catch Omand becomes the first Filipino to travel all 193 countries around the world with a Philippine passport. On BNC's agenda, she shares that it was not an easy feat, but it was worthwhile nonetheless. She also shares some tips for those who dream of becoming a jet setter. Okay, you can go to our website for those tips from Catch Omand. And those are the news this hour. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Stay with BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.